In many respects, it was difficult looking back at the year of 2025 and deciding which films were my favorite. There were a few standouts without a doubt. All of the items in my top 5 in particular had the potential to be my number 1 if they were released last year, but beyond that, I'm not sure if I can say I liked my 6th favorite film all that much more than my 20th. So this list, more so than any other I've done, feels like it could change with time, and there is no slot more likely to become outdated than my 10th. Yet, there was one question that made this first inclusion stand out above the others. Do trains dream of automotive sheep? I was not sure what I was expecting when I first saw Train Dreams on Netflix. I suppose I expected more trains, maybe, but Train Dreams matches very well with the kind of emotionally devastating, slower, and methodological indie movie that slips into my top 10 every year. This is a movie that hit me in the abdomen and left me winded without so much as throwing a punch. Train Dreams is an introspective and patient look at the hard life of one man. A laborer burdened by personal tragedies and silent, creeping traumas which he never outright acknowledges, but remains prevalent in his life nonetheless. We watch as time passes by, new technologies and historical events catching us, the viewing audience off guard as much as him. Joel Edgerton's character struggles to find meaning out of his lonely life in this ever-changing world, and I believe his story resonated with me, not so much because it was all that relatable to me now, my knees bend a little too easily for me to claim that, but because I just know this is a very particular melancholia that I will inevitably face when I'm older. Every frame in this movie is gorgeous. It is highly stylistic in a way that sort of reminded me of Wes Anderson, where every single shot felt meticulously set up and arranged. However, while Wes Anderson's movies come across as quirky and artificial in a way that is very much intentional and effective on his part, each shot in Train Dreams feels like a highly detailed oil painting by a great American painter, whether it is a vast landscape or an intimate table arrangement. On paper, it shouldn't work. Cinematography this blatantly framed and aesthetic usually takes you out of the drama to some extent, distracting you from the emotions at play, but in practice, the visuals very much play into the meditative nature of the film. And if this film resembles a vast Thomas Cole oil painting piece, this next film sort of resembles this. Why, you ask? I don't know, but art is weird. Yorgos Lanthimos' latest movie, Bugonia, didn't immediately strike me as one of my favorite movies of the year, I admit, but it does remain one of the more interesting ones and a movie I couldn't stop thinking about, so I believe it deserves a place on this list. Being a remake of the Korean film Save the Green Planet, a movie I have not seen yet, Bugonia follows a conspiracy theorist kidnapping the CEO of a pharmaceutical company because he believes she is an alien determined to destroy the Earth. Some might argue, in fact, given recent events, you could say many have argued, that he is right, but Bugonia as a whole ignores the concepts of heroes and villains. Yes, there is obvious class commentary. You don't need me to spell it out for you, even if the movie itself insists on treating its premise, and the line between human and extraterrestrial, very literally at points, but the dark and grimy tension that permeates throughout the movie, like a wad of honey, seems to represent something even deeper than that. I see Bugonia as a movie that comments on how difficult it has become for us, as humans, to understand each other, with not only bigger class disparities and standards of living, but also with the advance of technology and filter bubbles. We have started to see each other not as humans. The lower class will see the wealthy CEO types as malicious aliens, and the upper class are under their own delusions, seeing their employee and their consumers as worker bees. And this is a problem that Yorgos Lanthimos seems to predict will only get worse, to the point where the bubble keeping us all together will one day burst. The movie is surprisingly grounded when compared to Lanthimos' latest big hit, Poorvings. The majority of the film takes place in a dingy and rather mundane home, which feels more and more like a prison enveloping not only Emma Stone, CEO, who is obviously taken here by force, this is a literal prison to her, but also Jesse Plemons' troubled conspiracy theorist, who feels trapped inside his own clouded psyche and traumas. Somehow, he comes across as a victim too, despite doing many unredeemable things. It is hard to blame him. Nobody has free will in this movie. They are all carrying out their assigned roles, even when they attempt to rebel, even when they are calling the shots. Bugonia is one of the bleaker movies of the year when you stop and think about it, so you should totally see it. Hooray! Funnily enough, my friends who've also seen the movie don't seem to agree, but that's okay. They're still my friends. Friendship is just a little more important to me than Bugonia. I happen to have reviewed this one back when I was doing those. I sort of held off on doing bi-monthly movie reviews because I realized a lot of my thoughts tend to change over time, but this was not the case with Friendship, which still remains one of the funniest movies of the year for me. This is a movie that feels very uncomfortable in its own skin, and is proud of it. Nay, it delights in making its personal issues your issues. Andrew DeYoung takes on middle-aged male loneliness, starting from a mundane and semi-relatable place. I mean, I have friends, obviously, this doesn't apply to me. Andrew DeYoung takes on middle-aged male loneliness and starts from a mundane and semi-relatable place, but the movie takes things to absurd and grand heights, really keeping you guessing. I feel myself kind of horrified by Tim Robinson's lead character, not only because he turns out to be kind of a horrifying guy,
there's a new Marvel out that's supposed to be nuts. We should go see that.
But because I feel myself a little horrified about becoming him. They say great movies make you want to see other movies, but this one made me want to get off the couch and get a life, and I think there's value to that kind of film too. If you were to ask me which franchise, in a world oversaturated with franchises, is currently releasing the highest quality and artistically relevant movies, I would say the Dune films, without a doubt. Don't be goofy. But if you were to ask me which franchise is my favorite, it is Knives Out, and it is not even close. Somehow, Rian Johnson manages to imbue political and social commentary into his genre flair in a way that not only remains fun, but genuinely insightful each and every time. When it comes to that department, Wake Up Dead Man is his best work in the franchise. While the original Knives Out was about old money, and Glass Onion was about new money, Wake Up Dead Man is about, no money, it's about Jesus. The third installment in this murder mystery series is centered around religion in a way that I found extremely riveting, as we follow Josh O'Connor's priest working together with Daniel Craig's atheist detective to solve a local murder. Some have complained that we do not get as much of Benoit Blanc in this movie as they would have liked, and to some extent I agree, but I also think he is used the most effectively and intentionally here than any other film. Even if his screen time is more limited, Blanc no longer comes across as a purely benevolent and goofy grandfatherly figure with all the answers. He can come across as colder and more detached here, a man sure of his ways to the point where he can come across as callous, contrasting with O'Connor's sense of faith and empathy, which comes across as admirable, but also hinders investigation time after time again. I myself have a rather complicated relationship with faith. I've always believed in God, at least to some extent, but I've never found personal meaning or fulfillment in the church, and my view of religion as an institution has become increasingly antagonistic and borderline resentful as time goes on. I'm not entirely sure if this is a positive or a negative development on my part. And watching this movie, watching a man who is genuinely healed by faith and making an earnest attempt to heal others too, in an environment where that same faith is weaponized and leading a flock to darker paths, gave me a good bit to think about. I was led to a more empathetic place, not in spite of the goofier genre elements of the movie, but because of it. The Caper led to an accessible avenue through which I could process these themes, and I respect that this movie managed to challenge my beliefs rather than feed into them. The murder mystery's fun too, also. Maybe I should have led with that. Although I maybe come across as presumptuous, dear viewer, I assume you, at some point in your life, have either had or have met a mother. Just taking a wild guess here. Parenthood is a common phenomenon, as you can tell by all the people out there, but when you stop to think about all the compounding pressures and responsibilities and crises that come with raising a child, one can't help but wonder how that is even possible that we, as a society, have made it this far. We tend not to think about these pressures, though. We don't think about these responsibilities or these crises when we are not in the thick of it ourselves, and I think it is fair to say we hardly think about the mother's role, especially in balancing everything. Everything you need to know is in the title, which is already giving me I have no mouth and I must scream vibes. Those are certainly vibes. If I had legs, I'd kick you depicts, with relentless and merciless fashion, a mother being pushed to her limits as she is bombarded by problems big and small, and the world refuses to give her a break or even offer her a glimpse of empathy. Even the hamster is an asshole.
ほう、向かってくるのか。
Director Mary Bronstein does not come across as preachy, just honest. She expertly depicts this resulting spiral through a frenetic, entertaining, often drilling, and occasionally surreal experience that, at times, feels like a horror movie, although it is not, except for a very scary hole. The whole movie hinges on Rose Byrne to give a stellar performance because the spotlight is deliberately on her character. In the world of the movie, there is not a single moment that is about her. Even in her paid therapy time, her therapist, played surprisingly by Conan O'Brien, seems to prioritize his other patients over her because she too is a therapist and works just down the hall from him. But the movie is undeniably about her going so far as to make the fascinating directorial decision to never show the daughter's face, presumably to avoid distracting us with a sympathetic and presumably adorable child. All of the attention is on Rose Byrne, and she gives one of the best performances of the year. I believe this is essential viewing for anyone who is about to, or is thinking about becoming, a parent. Then again, I worry it might convince you to abandon ship outright, and I'm 90% sure that's not Bronstein's intention. 89%. And we've reached a turning point. Remember when I said anything in my top 5 could have been my number 1 if it was released last year? I hope you do. I said that just like 15 minutes ago. Well, to that I say...
Swat!
For any of you who saw my very early Oscar predictions at the beginning of the year, you might remember that I called Marty Supreme my most anticipated movie of the year. I think. I actually don't remember what I said, but it was, how could it not, a Safdie brother movie coming hot off of Uncut Gems, starring Timothée Chalamet, described as a mix between Wolf of Wall Street and Catch Me If You Can, about a ping-pong guy. It is the highest praise I can maybe offer that the movie not only met those initial expectations, but surpassed them. Similarly to Uncut Gems, Josh Safdie has a very unique method of casting. It can come across as stunt casting, and maybe it is, but I think of it more as him casting people whose personas match their characters. Kevin O'Leary plays a salty businessman in this movie, and he is known as a salty businessman, not only in Shark Tank, but also in real life. Gwyneth Paltrow is an actress who has been up to other very weird things that are not acting.
I had an exorcism. Oh, wow.
And here she plays a washed-up actress. Odessa Ozion is a currently rather unknown actress who, like her character, surprises you by revealing the true intensity that lies underneath. This has the effect of making this movie feel like a sort of dreamlike state resembling our own reality, but distinctly not. Like a dream, absurd things happen in this film, and you learn to more or less go with it. That is the best way to enjoy this movie, like that is the best way to enjoy a dream. For every singular problem Timothée Chalamet's Marty Mauser gets himself out of, he seems to create 2 more, and this growing tab of ramifications and consequences start to compound as the movie marches on in its chaotic synthwave drumbeat. Unlike the other cast members I mentioned, it feels less as though Timothée Chalamet was cast around his persona, but that he built his persona around his character. It started ever since he won the SAG for his performance of Bob Dylan last year, where this previously mild-mannered guy, dressed like a stick of minty gum, started coming across super ambitiously and hungry, to the point of borderline pretension, and he has made himself the face of the marketing material and hopped on various podcasts and interviews where he described himself as a relentless guy who wants nothing more than to be one of the best actors of all time. He started speaking a mile a minute and has this look in his eye like a dog eyeing a flap of steak.
This was about a 6 or 7 year training process.
For those who have seen the movie, does that sound familiar? Not the 6-7 part, but I would argue that this is a fascinating case of performance art that not only retroactively bolsters this parallel, dreamlike vibe of the movie. Suddenly, Chalamet matches Marty Mauser in the same exact way Kevin O'Leary matches his character. But the stunts have given this movie about a ping-pong guy a surprising amount of attention. Either that or he just went insane, and that wouldn't be the first time that happened in Hollywood, but either way, the context around the performance only serves to strengthen the movie. The movie itself too obviously holds up, and so does Chalamet's hopefully Oscar-winning performance. Let's give him his Marty Mauser moment, folks, or before you know it, Chalamet's gonna get up to the same antics his character does in this movie, and we'd all be endangered then. Think of the children, Academy.
When I think Good Time, which obviously came out after, Robert Pattinson, shwat!
As I alluded to earlier in this very video, I am a huge fan of the detective genre. When I was in high school, I read Paul Auster's deconstruction of the detective genre for my English class, his novel, City of Glass. A deconstruction, well, it deconstructs. It takes a typical story within a genre, strips it for spare parts, exposing the tropes, the story structure, and reassembles these parts into something unrecognizable, letting things go to wildly different and typically more realistic ramifications.
I don't know what I expected.
One might assume I wouldn't have enjoyed City of Glass, given my affinity towards a pure and untampered mysterious story, but to the contrary, it gave me a new appreciation for the genre by making me look at it from a new perspective. I went from really liking the detective story to absolutely adoring it after reading City of Glass. All this to say, the Mastermind did something very similar for me as a deconstruction of the crime genre. Yeah, insert the little montage thingy we finally got here. Mastermind is actually my first introduction to Kelly Reichardt as a filmmaker, so I admit, I'm coming at this one as a little bit of an outsider. She made a movie about a cow, apparently, so I'm clearly out of my element, but I am serious that this movie really reminded me of City of Glass. The Mastermind is a low-scale heist movie about an unemployed man trying to steal a famous painting from a small-town art museum. It stars Josh O'Connor, who is in everything lately, and that is great. I'm a big fan of that. He's not a cow, but beggars can't be choosers. Reichardt has a very distinct and minimalist style, often letting each scene breathe with plenty of elbow room and watching each action, from Josh O'Connor's character hanging up a painting on his living room wall to stashing something in a pigsty, carry out with each and every awkward step, cutting to the next thing only when there is absolutely nothing more to show. Debatably the complete opposite of Park Chan-wook, and I'm finding I really like both. There is a rhythmic and methodological way the movie progresses, especially accompanied by a hypnotic jazz score, which, if I ever made a movie, I would want a score that sounded exactly like this. While most might associate the heist movie with intricate schemes and high-tension thrills, the Mastermind keeps things comparatively humble and local, and it's adorned with a dry sense of wit, a very dry sense of wit, that makes its title subtly come across as sarcasm, all coming together in a very peculiar ending that feels like it should not work, but is perfect for the kind of movie this is. So yeah, I might have come for Josh O'Connor, but I am staying for Kelly Reichardt. I am absolutely a fan. So I did mention Park Chan-wook just a bit earlier. There's nobody who can make a movie quite like Park Chan-wook. there is something not quite right with this glorious man. From here on out, any movie could easily be my number one on this list, as this was the toughest time I've ever had in any of these year-end videos selecting a clear favorite film. This is more of a 1A, 1B, 1C situation, but that would be a cop-out, and if there's anything this movie taught me, it's to go all in. Maybe that was the wrong lesson. No Other Choice follows a man suddenly laid off from his job who, in a bout of desperation, decides the only way to get his job back is to kill the competition. It is a dark vision of who we are becoming as a society, hemmed by the hilarious and frenetic vision of a madman who provides us with the most creative perspective shots and batshit transitions you can find in the industry today. Maybe ever, honestly. Hitchcock is great, but did he ever have a straw cam? Yet, for his love of zany visuals and bombastic flourishes, Park Chan-wook has a love for symbolism that rivals the great literary masters, and there's a lot of substance behind the style in this movie. You might recognize the lead guy as the frontman from Squid Game, and the bad guy from K-pop Demon Hunters.
A demon boy band?
Although that one is maybe less noticeable.
My little soda pop.
Besides the point, he is stellar in this. There is something grim, yet darkly satisfying, about watching Lee Byung-hun's character grow from bumbling and whimpering to cold and calculated as he carries out these murders, because as his trepidation starts to fade, and he keeps telling himself he has no other choice, so too does his conscience. Well, I didn't think that was an appropriate place for that sound effect, but I'll allow it. No Other Choice is a funeral march to an older, kinder, and dying world. Stop! But it does it in a highly enjoyable way that anyone can enjoy. Nobody makes a movie like this, so stop being a square and experience Park Chan-wook for yourself. Please. No Other Choice speaks a lot about the turmoil in our current times, which is a recurring theme this year, and in No Other Choice, one of the greatest directors working today depicts a villainous turn for a bumbling idiot. What happens when another one of our greatest directors takes on the current times and creates a revolutionary action hero? Well, this hero is also depicted as a bumbling idiot. One battle after another has one of the most riveting beginnings in recent film, depicting the fiery rise and the dramatic fall of the extremist revolutionary group, the French 75. These first 30 minutes work as a standalone story with entirely different leads in all that matters. Teyana Taylor takes the reins and steals the spotlight with all the conviction of someone who is going to be in the movie from start to finish, while Leonardo DiCaprio's character is completely unrecognizable from how he is later on. This standalone story, some might call it a tragedy, allows a new story to hit the ground running. There's a consistent momentum that makes this 3-hour epic feel so much shorter than it actually is. But stylistically, maybe epic is the wrong word, and intentionally so. Paul Thomas Anderson takes on the action thriller in a peculiar way, where the action scenes often feel the most quiet, as we watch our characters, often in bumbling fashion, waddle in and out of precarious situations. These scenes are typically backed by Johnny Greenwood's frenetic score that feels like it would unravel at any moment. There is an unsteady feel all throughout that is thoroughly captivating, which probably speaks about these aforementioned current times more than any deliberate political messaging. This movie is probably going to win Best Picture, and it deserves it, even if a different movie would be my personal pick. But first, some honorable mentions. Sentimental Value is the kind of movie that probably benefits from having more time to steep than its limited late release allowed me. Nonetheless, it was a very evocative character drama, with my favorite sequences relating to the history of this family and the house that surrounds it. The Secret Agent, likewise, is an audacious and often bizarre film, covering resistance in the face of fascism through a very different way, if we're comparing this one to I'm Still Here last year, which was another Brazilian film covering similar themes. Omaha is still my favorite movie that I watched at the beginning of the year around Sundance, an emotionally devastating road trip movie about one very specific thing that I will not spoil here. You'll have to watch it for yourself. K-pop Demon Hunters, bop, yeah, I know. I didn't think too much of this one when I saw it on my TV, as one could probably tell by my review, which I did because it was on Netflix. I thought the movie was neat, but not particularly mind-blowing. But seeing this big movie in theaters was a whole other experience, and really made the difference for me. so the theater improved experience of seeing this Netflix movie. I wonder if this is a matter I'm gonna talk about again later in the video. Probably not. Black Bag is a slick and stylish spy movie that makes the most out of its shorter runtime. Believe it or not, this is probably my number 11, but although I had no complaints with the film, I didn't have a whole lot to say about it either. The Phoenician Scheme is one of my favorites from Wes Anderson, so I feel like it should be on this list, but I've been a little hot and cold with his style, and at the moment I'm a bit more on the cold side. I'm sure if I see this movie again I'll come to regret the snub, but I know. I saw Ryan Coogler's Sinners at the beginning of this year, and it has stuck with me ever since. Sinners is more than an action movie, more than a horror movie, more than any one genre can contain. Is it pretentious to call it an experience? A high, maybe? While Sinners is not quite a musical, not in the conventional sense, music has seeped into the marrow of its bones, from the mind-blowing original score by Ludwig Göransson that has cemented him as a Mount Rushmore film composer for me. The original songs written for the movie that lead to show-stopping scenes, to the classic folk songs and Irish shanties that set the scene and mesmerizes the viewing audience along with its characters. Sinners does not use music, it is music. The two are attached like how a heartbeat cannot be separated from a living body. Look at this vampire doing a little jig. Look at him! Is this not one of the greatest movies to have ever done it? Is this not one of the greatest things you have ever seen? Warner Bros., the studio that backed Sinners and One Battle After Another, is not exactly a bastion of pure creativity, but nonetheless they put out two certified bangers that were made for and subsequently elevated by the theater experience. Now that Warner Bros. Is either going to be bought by Netflix pretty openly promises to wipe theaters out of business, or at the very least deprioritize theaters in favor of streaming first experiences, or Paramount openly promises to politically neuter their work and stamp out originality in favor of franchise films, it seems clear to me that One Battle After Another and Sinners bookmark the end of an era, at least for Warner Bros. A last breath of theater-ready, original, and culturally subversive cinema. Sinners would have been my number one nonetheless, but the context helps me understand why this movie mattered so much to me and many others. Although I worry about the future, I made this video to celebrate the present, and is this not the core of Sinners? A transcendent celebration on the brink of darkness and destruction. A blaze of glory before the vampires come to assimilate you. It's best to appreciate these kinds of movies while we have them. And that's all I got. If you liked this video, please give me a like and a ring-a-ding-bing of the little bell icon down below to subscribe. Happy New Year, everyone.